3, 2, 1.
Hi.
Hi.
We're doing a thing.
Yep, it's definitely a thing.
If you are watching now, which I don't think there's anybody watching, welcome. If you're watching like later or even 10 years from now, thanks for watching.
Yes.
We're experimenting with something new. You'll notice this isn't our well, you won't notice there's nothing different from reviews and drinks. This isn't our usual reviews and drinks. We're not actually doing reviews of shows we've seen.
We're not bringing anyone's name into things.
No, this is just us talking about different hot takes in theater, stuff we've been thinking, and we can't really say like in a review or reviews and drinks because we're not actually talking about any of the people we're reviewing. These are just thoughts about theater we've had and we've wanted to talk about.
These are comments we've had. We've just convos we've had like on the car. Someone's like, someone should say something about this, but it didn't feel like a blog post. Definitely wasn't a review because they're not.
Is your hair on me?
Yes.
Anyway,
occupational having a spouse with long flowing hair.
So, today's topic is actually we wanted to kind of dive into if you're friends with us on Facebook. We'll often like say random things off the cuff. Sometimes about our lives, and that's boring. But sometimes about theater, and it's just thoughts we're having as people are bringing up conversations about theater.
Mm-hmm.
And a month or two ago.
Yeah,
a month or two ago, I said we're only going to review original works, and we got a lot of likes, but I think some people were confused by what we were saying.
Yeah, it's very confusing to say because original in the theater is kind of a hot button topic anyway. Like what counts as original? Is a world premiere original, or is like there's so many ways you could define original. Here's how we define it.
Really? That you're gonna say there's a lot of ways to define original?
Yeah.
That's such a weird way to start. Like, that's not actually a thing. Original actually means one thing. No, I think it caused a problem because people were like, we're just getting out of a pandemic, and what we do to survive is on us. And it's like, that's not what we're saying. What I think we were trying to say is we're not the right critics to review Grease.
Yeah.
Yeah. At the end of the day, like, we would love to tell you that we're the critics you want to call if you're about to do Grease or Hairspray or anything like that. But we've come to the realization we have like a 2-watch limit on existing properties before we're like, oh, there's nothing left to say.
We've done that, and prior to the pandemic, when we reviewed a show 3 times.
Into the Woods.
It was Into the Woods. And we learned very quickly after the 3rd time watching Into the Woods.
That's not our ministry, to quote Tabitha Brown.
Yeah, it's just there's so many times you can talk about that, and then there's the problem where we try
you need to specify this or that. It drives me crazy when you do that. That just like you need to talk about this or that. What is this or that?
Well, we could talk about. There's only so many times you can talk about how Stephen Sondheim wrote this as like an anti-fairy tale thing, and then he sold it straight to Disney, and just that kind of effort to it. You can only talk about like the storyline and just how everything goes.
Well, I think a lot of times with works that have existed for a while is that there's only so many times we can watch it and say this actor was a great Sandy, or this director made sure everybody did the dance well, or created a new dance for Grease or Into the Woods. And when you see Into the Woods 3 times in 1 year, you realize that there's not a lot to say, to the point where there was one actress playing Little Red in 2 versions of the 3 we saw. And that in of itself was sort of that there's nothing to say here.
Yeah.
We've run out of things. But I think for us, what we were saying with original is not just like Grease or Into the Woods, which, you know, being not original, but like
Mm-hmm.
we would also accept original interpretations of those.
If you have something you're doing with the show that's way different than anyone would see, and if you're bragging about how different it is, you're bragging about how they do some. We talk about, like, one of the examples is if you're doing an all transgender cast for Grease, call us please on the
We
phone.
would love to see that. We would love to see what you did with it. But a lot of times people just put up the same show with a
Mm-hmm.
different cast, and for us, there's not much for us to like sink our teeth into and talk about and deep dive and really even consider when we're talking about works like that.
Especially as now that we're getting press releases from all over. I'm telling you, we get press releases from Canada, South America, Brazil. We get press releases from anywhere. About a million people are doing the same show at the same time. It all
Mm-hmm.
hit the catalog, the MTI catalog at the same time. Everyone cleared the rights at the same time. So we see. I know there's like 16 Legally Blondes going on out there. I know there's a million different like productions of different shows, and we're gonna watch two.
Before we can't say anything, and I mean, like, I think we say too. As we go into this, we'll talk about some examples of like things we've seen where like we completely sort of, I don't want to say botch. We didn't botch the review, but
Mm-hmm.
we went further than maybe somebody who was producing this
That
show would have wanted.
that's let's actually get into that, because that what the other problem we have is that we learned really quickly we're into a theater criticism mindset.
Mm-hmm.
Of review is very much a thumbs up, thumbs down, or a how the I'm gonna
1 to 5 stars.
1 to 5 stars. We don't like to do that. That's just not our ministry. That's not something
That's
we've
not who
done.
we are.
In fact, one of the things we always say is whether we like a show or not
Doesn't matter.
doesn't matter. There are shows we've watched I don't like at all. It doesn't matter which ones they are. It's none of your business which ones they, or it's none of my business whether or not I like the show or not. I give it the best review, saying like, what did we find that they what were
What
they
were they trying to do?
yes.
Were they successful? If yes, how were they successful? If not, how could they be successful in the future? And you can't have that conversation with Greece, really. I mean, you can with the cast, you can kind of,
With
but
a cast, like, you can see if they're trying to do something different with Grease that no one else is
with
trying.
the play itself and the original, its original creation, I can't tell the writer of Grease what they could have done to be better. They don't care.
Yeah, we like to impact writers and artists and people who are doing cool stuff. The writer of Grease has cashed those checks.
Mm-hmm.
He is not interested in changing the show at all, regardless of what we say.
But so backing up to like 2 times where we've had a situation where it was like, oh yeah, maybe we need to stop reviewing these shows. Which one you want to talk about first?
Let's talk about Crucible first.
Crucible. The first situation was Crucible.
Yeah.
We had ended up once again 2 theaters within like a couple months of each other. We're doing Crucible, and this was back when Ricky had the main headline, and I was helping.
A lot of it was like by Ricky Young-Howze.
I think we did that just cause I don't even know.
We started out with Dana was my social media manager, even though Dana taught me how to review by taking me up and reviewing movies in New York. But the idea was like I was the theater person, they were the film person,
and never the tween shall meet.
And you've seen how well that got us.
But so we had seen Crucible twice, and this time we were seeing it at a high school. And one of the problems with high school kids now doing the Crucible is that witch is a ubiquitous term. We all know a witch. I mean, I probably have like
witches,
half my friends.
Brujas, we have
like half my friends list is witches, and
we love them.
And I wouldn't have it any other way. But like when you're doing the Crucible, like you have to imagine that witch wasn't the way we see it now, where witch was like witches are common. They're
We're in a
everywhere.
post Hocus Pocus, post Bewitch, post society.
It's a whole different world. So like you have to imagine more like they're saying, you're a pink fluffy alien bunny and you're supposed to have that reaction like that's not even a thing. Like what are you saying?
Or even if you think it's a thing, I know I wasn't doing it, but all the kids seem to have this idea of like, oh well, you caught me.
Yeah, I'm a witch. Congratulations.
It's like I don't know if they secretly made like their behind the scenes spines of like, oh, we're totally witches and they caught us, but the idea was like this was created as a allegory. Like what was Arthur Miller trying to do? He was trying to create an allegory for McCarthyism, and so he fudged some numbers of like some ages. He bumped some people up, and this is one time
bumped some people down,
bumped some other people down. Well, the place where I realized that Dana was going to be a co-writer with me was at this moment. So what had happened was, I'm getting right here. I'm writing, and I'm making my notes, and we're in person, and we're watching the kids, excellent performers, doing really good work, and we're sitting there, and Dana takes the phone from me. They would normally take the phone from me and add any notes of like stuff they saw, and when like, I really sympathize with Abigail. And I went, huh. And I went, why? And Dana was like, Abigail was basically raped by John Proctor. And then I went, huh. And then when we were out and we were driving home, they went like, yeah, if you think about it, Abigail worked for John Proctor in a patriarchal society. She had no other recourse. She couldn't really consent at this time because one, right nowadays she's barely age of consent at like 16 or something. And then she was like, it was her employer. There is such a thing as rape by authority, where this person had an authority over you. And so this idea is like John Proctor, like, oh, I strayed. I committed one mistake. It's like, no, you took advantage of an employee, someone who was in your home that you paid to be there, and then all of a sudden you kicked her out.
That was her loss of livelihood. That could have been her loss of livelihood. That could have been her reputation. That could be a ton of things.
They definitely like took an ill stance on adultery at that time, and she would have
been suffered the brunt of that punishment even more than he would. He would have been able to sort of walk away as, oh, I strayed one time, but then she's, scarlet lettered for the rest of her life.
And that's one of the reasons why, and I think we put a little bit about it in the review.
We talked about how actually it was a metaphor for rape culture, and that's how Dana and Ricky think, is we're looking at this play that people have done 1,000 times.
A bazillion times.
And we're looking at it like, no, it's a metaphor for rape culture. This girl only had one recourse of action, and that was to basically smear this guy's name, say he and his wife are witches, and, pull them through the mud. Is it the best course of action? No. Was it the only one? Yeah.
Just about, yeah.
You can't really look at the Crucible the same way again when you think about it like that. So whether Arthur Miller meant it or not.
And then you look at how Arthur Miller, like, he fabricated this whole thing in the first place. Like, Abigail Williams was way younger. John Proctor was way older. And so the guy who was sleeping with Marilyn Monroe decided, like, yeah, that thought over there just be lying sometimes. And we want to bring that in. When we do reviews, we were really doing literary criticism where we're really wanting to talk about all this and unpack this stuff.
Yeah.
And the problem is it's a high school show.
And you don't really want to unpack all this on 16-year-olds, or maybe we should. Maybe these are the conversations we should be having.
Maybe the kids need to hear this. And so that was one of the, then we can get over, Tourette's. That was one of the shows where I learned Dana's a co-writer. 100%.
But also we learned that we probably only have 2 watches before we're going to go in a deep critical mindset about what this actually means, what it means in society today, society today, what it means to play that kind of part. What are we saying in a modern context? Another time
The
where,
other time was
oh my gosh,
it was
this is an exception that proves the rule, and this was, we'd only seen this play once, and that was Hunchback of Notre Dame by Disney. And a friend of ours who was directing it, and he did an amazing job. The problem is, and we said we didn't know if this was a directing problem, a writing problem, or whatever. We now know it's probably a writing
we
problem.
heavily assumed it was a writing problem, like he was saddled with some bad writing.
But basically, the character of Quasimodo in this interpretation is deaf. He's been ringing bells in Notre Dame, and he's like right next to him. He can't hear very well. Well, when he talks to other people, his speech is very slurred and very stereotypical of somebody who can't hear. And I want to make that clear that it's stereotypical. It's not because the actor playing it can hear. So I don't think it's a very good interpretation.
Yeah, and I had it on full authority that this actor, who is they them, was non-binary. I forget their name, but they have like 3-octave perfect pitch, an amazing singer. We noticed.
But the other thing they did with the character is that he's deaf and he talks funny when he talks to other people, but when he's talking to himself or the statues in the church, he sings amazingly, or he talks clearly, or he has a voice of an angel. And we're like, uh-oh.
And that's supposed to be like, well, in his head he can sing, and I'm like, ugh. We're both big advocates for disability arts. We do know that there was, I think in New Jersey or elsewhere, there were productions of this using a deaf actor.
You can even find them on YouTube right now.
Just look up Hunchback Notre Dame deaf actor. You will find it.
It's beautiful. It's so well done. And maybe that was our fault. We saw those videos before we saw this production.
And the idea was we had to talk about this is a weird writing problem, and this is where they took a role away from a deaf actor, or like just from the outset, maybe he can't sing so beautifully in his head. If he has this disability, this is how you need to move. And it's a serious problem with the script. Yeah. And we talked with the director about it, because the director was like, well, we couldn't find an actor like this. I was saddled with this. I don't necessarily pick the shows. I get contracted to pick them. It's like, and that was one of those things where, yes, we need to talk about this, because we want to be talking to the people who make the decisions to do these shows. We want to be talking about this to audiences. And we even had 2 people who saw the show after it and went, you said it was bad. You said there, but you never said why.
You never explained why it was a problem. And we started realizing that people wanted to know why we thought the things we thought, or why we were bringing these deeper concepts into what amounted to an everyday musical. I mean, these are musicals done all over the world, probably 10 of them happening right now.
I call them like your Sunday afternoon musicals. Like, we used to see these on the matinees and reviews, and like, it's a good time to watch them, but you don't think about it, so someone needs to be bringing these up.
But even 2 of Ricky's former coworkers were like, yeah, we were like, hey, wait, isn't he supposed to be deaf? That's so weird. And when you brought it up, we can't unhear it now. But also, we thought it was offensive to the deaf community. I apologize. I am not with it today. Because they don't think they're disabled. It's a very common thing in the community that they think they were born this way, and that's fine.
And they have their language. They have their own theater.
We haven't been able to review it.
Their own culture, arts. They have their own everything.
And so, to put your feelings on their existence as if they would want to be like you is so problematic. It's not even funny. And then, as a disabled person, to have this thing where I'm supposed to think I'm able-bodied in my head, and I don't think I'm able-bodied in my head.
And we definitely know that we're not able-bodied in our head.
Like, my imagination is not that strong, and so to think that I would want to be anything other than me, like real Dana's like this, but the Dana in my head is like doing
Mm-hmm.
somersaults or something is just so ludicrous and so offensive, and we couldn't not talk about it.
And so that is one of the those are two of the shows we go back to that kind of informed how we talk now, where we want to, if we see it, we're going to talk about
Yeah.
it. We want to be able to impact the decision makers. We want to be able to impact the writers, the directors, the producers who are making these decisions to do shows like these or stage stuff like these. And that's usually the best way to do it, is to get in on the ground floor with original works.
Yeah, one of the things that digital theater is great for is original works.
Absolutely amazing.
Because when you have the writer right there with you, you can say, "Hey, is it okay if we record this? Is it okay if we perform it and stream it live to a wider audience?" And a lot of times, the writers will be very accommodating. They'll even
Mm-hmm.
help you adjust their work to fit more into a digital framework.
How
And
many playwrights have we seen that actually aided in like making the play better for Zoom or stuff like that, or
all the
better for
time,
streaming?
and you have a work that's developing and being created right before your eyes, and that's something you miss out on when
Mm-hmm.
when you see the usual theater fare. um One of our big things is we had to start saying we want to do only original works, because we there's not much you can say to the guy who wrote Hunchback of Notre Dame. There's
We
nothing
watched a
there.
lot of Alan Menken musicals. I always make the joke of they've already cashed that check.
Hmm.
They don't. They are not thinking about rewriting it. They're not reading for the blogs. They're not doing that, and it actually enabled us to do as many reviews as we have.
Yeah.
We've actually found that we can do two or three original works in the same span it is to like watch the bigger things and do stuff like that. Especially then we can talk about how like Zoom and digital actually favors more short forms, maybe favors more short stuff and more of the.
I thought we were talking more about original and not original. What do you mean short form?
What I'm saying is like a lot of the stuff we've seen that isn't has been out there is still the 2 hours, and it's also an easy form of our decision making process, that a lot of the things written originally for short forms is shorter, for digital theater is shorter. Sorry, I'm.
You lost me. This is why it's called Ricky Says Dana Says, by the way.
Okay, what Ricky says is, if say we're watching someone do an uncut version of Shakespeare, that's 3 hours,
Ugh.
2 or 3 hours on streaming.
By the way, I'm sorry you hate me, and that's why you did 3 hours of
And
Shakespeare.
and there's intermissions, there's things like that.
Oh.
And then what we found, especially with fringe festivals, everything is 30 to 40 minutes long. An hour if you're just had a lot of work to do. And so in that same 3 hour span, we did three shows, and we actually know the writer. We can actually work at we can actually talk about the directing, the writing, the producing, and we can get that out a lot
We can
more.
do more than say this actor acted the same role we've seen 1,000 times well. We can say this was an interesting concept for a play.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that's really nice is knowing you can reach out to the writers and
Yeah.
knowing that you can, I don't want to say affect their work. I hope, like, I don't want to say like, oh yeah, we said something and they completely edited their work.
No,
That's not
please
what
don't.
we want.
Please don't just change all your lives to better suit our mood, because we are fickle as hell.
We are very fickle people, but it's nice knowing that maybe it got them to thinking. Maybe they edited the work if they felt it needed editing. Maybe they took that note and they made it in something else in the future, and it helped them create even more.
Also, the reviewers and the critics are the professional audience members.
Mm-hmm.
So usually if we've said something, like three or four of the audiences probably said the same thing.
Yeah.
And so we can, I hope a lot of times we affirm what the community has already been saying to you, or we So we affirm the praise or we confirm some of the negative stuff.
It's like, oh, I didn't even think of that. Or, oh, the audience, you know what? A few people did say that. I'm glad to know that you saw that too. Um, Another reason we kind of had to say only original works is actually something that's a big fluke in our lives, and that is we're busy. um, we
Yeah.
when we started, people didn't know who we were.
Mm-hmm.
That was even in New Jersey, people didn't really know what a Dana and a Ricky was. And so we would knock on doors, try to get people to let us in. And a lot of times we got doors slammed in our face.
We
And
did a lot of begging.
You get used to that. Then the pandemic hit, and we actually just started following people we knew to festivals and to other theaters, and that allowed us to knock on the door and get our foot in the door in new ways, because we could say, hey, we know this actor, we know this director, we know this performer, we saw them at this thing, we would love to see them do something at your thing along with the other works there.
We didn't seek to be like all over the world, coining post geography. We started with just people we knew at our alma mater, and then we found they were going to this fringe, and then when we found another fringe, we found like this person was at this fringe, and it just spiraled out, and all of a sudden we're reviewing global works.
Yeah, and so one of the things that started happening is people are now pitching us, which is new.
It's a wonderful new thing. I know it's supposed to be what happens. We're supposed to be getting press releases. Up until like November, December of last year, we were still having to pitch a lot.
Yeah, a lot of times we were reaching out to festivals, artists, theaters, saying, hi, this is who we are, this is what we do, here's our website. And then now that doesn't happen as much. In fact, a lot of times our emails are floating out there in the ether, and we're getting people pitching us.
We're on a lot of people's automated press list now.
And so we had to say we can't review Grease, so we can review 10 or 20 something else's.
Yeah.
And it's just so we can free up our calendar, really. I mean, there's no shame in trying to do something that's not original, or doing a musical, or doing an existing play.
There's not even a shame for like doing something for the market value.
But us trying to say anything about it probably wasn't going to help you any. And so we had to figure out, how are we going to cull the numbers? How are we going to cut down on how many different people we review in a year? And so that was one of the quickest ways to cut things down, is if we work mainly with original works or original interpretations of existing works, we at least have something to say, we have something to do. And there's a lot fewer of those. Well, I say there's fewer of those. There's a lot of you guys out there.
Sorry, don't mean to laugh so maniacally.
There's a lot of you out there, and there's a lot of people creating new work every single day. And I mean, that's our joy in life, is to see that, and to see like plays that we saw in their inception become, grow and become more exciting.
There's a lot of times where we've been following the development, which has been really important during the start of digital theater, the start of just how we're moving from pandemic theater, we're doing this because we have to, into digital theater, where people are starting to step forward and do this because they want to.
Yeah.
We've seen shows start from like the very basic Zoom call to now that was the on-demand thing that's being reviewed by the Wall Street Journal.
Yeah.
And now we're seeing someone who was doing their stuff on Facebook, just going Facebook Live, just asking for donations. Now they're moving in the broadcast for schools. And it's funny to see that evolution. And that evolution, I don't think we could have tracked that evolution. And it was very hard to track evolution like that beforehand.
Yeah, because there wasn't anything to change. You got your best actors, you put on a musical, and you did it again and again because it always worked. And I think with new works, you do have this thing where it might not work, but you're going to try again anyway, and that's a lot more interesting and a lot more fun to watch. I think, let me go over the things we wanted to talk about.
We had notes.
We have notes.
We just decided not to use them.
Let me see. We talked about wanting to talk about existing writers that will actually read what we say and maybe care about what we say. Eliminating shows from the thing, yada yada yada.
Oh, stage readings. Why we won't review reading?
Oh, do you want to talk about why we won't review stage readings? By the way, mumbling.
Let's just talk about this. We've talking about development. One of the things we end up talking about, it's weird that we say we'll only review original work, but a lot of times you'll see that we won't review stage readings.
Mm-hmm.
And you'll see a lot of stuff. We have a blog series called More As This Develops, but we're often more reviewing the new work's development and their style more than the merits of the show.
Basically, what this organization does to help develop writers in progress than the actual work itself. Because unfortunately, I guess in reality, we don't want to stifle an artist who's just test running this very, very rough draft. It's one thing when it's like it's been polished a bit and this is its premiere. Yeah. Premieres, we're all over it.
All over
game,
premieres.
Free game. But when you're doing a reading, there's so much that's good that could go wrong just by it being a reading. I think recently we actually had to tap out of a show because we realized they were reading the stage directions. And pro tip from your friendly neighborhood Dana: when you're doing practices for your reading, read as somebody's reading the stage directions. Have a pen in hand, and if it's something that the actor can do, scratch that out. Please, for the love of all that is holy.
You're getting this for free, by the way. No, what I've noticed is because my MFA is in playwriting, I've had to do stage readings of my work all the time. I've had to do more of the what it's called rehearsal room productions, where you're up on your feet, but you don't have a lot of production value involved. If I had a reviewer coming to those things, I would have ran into the wilderness, never wanting anyone to see my face again.
But it's a lot to review those. But when you have these stage directions, I'm going to go back on this because everybody needs to hear this. When you have those stage directions where it says, oh, she reaches for her mug. If the actor has a mug and can reach for it, don't say that out loud. It stifles the action to a halt.
And it's one of those things, it also makes everything go a bit longer.
A lot longer.
And also you don't have to read the direction of like how they said something. If like Jake is already going to say something excitedly, don't have to interrupt Jake and says excitedly.
Yeah, we saw it. We saw it happen.
But that's one of the things with digital theater that's great it's great for original works, is and you can do a lot of readings and you don't have to have the same table read, someone's reading stage directions. You can easily bring in pictures and sound effects and stuff in a way that no one would have let you in a developmental lab.
I would actually say try to get your digital theater readings down to like a digital performance. Mm-hmm. See how far you can take it. I think a lot of times people are afraid, and don't be afraid. So yeah, was this episode us saying what we don't review anymore, or were we more talking about original work versus...
I think what we want to wrap around and pin on is like the ideas we're doing when you have original works. We as critics and we as reviewers, it's our ministry. We found more that we can talk about original works better in a way that the normal theater canon. There's been a lot said about it.
I mean, even things like Shakespeare have started to bog down on us. That doesn't mean we're not going to come to your Shakespeare festival. We're at two of them right now.
We're at two of them right now.
But like, just think of interesting and exciting ways to do the same Shakespeare. We had the blessing of seeing an all-female Othello once, and that was really cool. But like, if you're just like, we're just going to do Othello, you're going to get me going, I don't want to go. I don't want to see it again. I get it. It's about an idiot who listens to his bros before he listens to his girl, and that's a problem. Don't do that.
And that's what you'll get from us.
That's the review. There's your review of Othello from here into the other end of time. It's don't listen to your bros. There. It's the review.
If you're sleeping with someone, listen to and they said they didn't sleep with somebody.
Do not mess with the provider of thy nookie. There. Your review.
And so this is the first episode, the world premiere. That you'll see why we didn't really announce this, because we're still trying to figure out how
we're still learning.
What I hope you found is that a lot of times we don't agree at all on some things.
We don't agree on a lot of things.
Even if we don't agree on something like, or we agree on like we only review original works, I'll say things like there's many different ways of doing original, and they will say
no, there's not.
And this won't devolve into the normal arguments we do have, but we hope that this series we can find these hot topics we've been talking about for a while, and see if anyone out there can hit us up in the comments, or tell us if they've felt anything about this too.
Email us. Say like you guys were totally off base, or you guys were wonderful, or whatever else.
Start the conversation up. We've been talking to ourselves too long.
We hate the sound of our own voices, really. But all joking aside, if there's other hot topics you just want to hear us rant about for a little over a half hour, let us know. Email us. Our Venmo's down below. We probably should have done a proper intro, but as we said, this is just us randomly trying this. We'll see how this goes.
We're doing workshops in dramatic theater criticism, post-geography, and other things. If you want us to come and talk about what it's like to be theater reviewers, digital theater or otherwise, I'm going to put that up now with our email.
There we go. Hold on. We're professionals. We know exactly what we're doing. Hold on.
Yep.
Stop touching it.
There we go. I is a theater professional.
Anyway.
That's reviews. No, that's not reviews and drinks.
Y'all, that was Ricky Says, Dana Says. Good night. Good luck. Goodbye.